Hello. Hello, and welcome to Dice and Demons. I'm Emma, and I'm just, I'm basically playing with my new toy. I just painted this Doom Scythe for my Necron army, and I'm just really excited about it. It sounds a little bit grand when I'm saying my Necron army. I have this thing painted here, and then I've got 5 warriors painted, so it's a very, very modest force. But that, someday it'll hopefully be an entire 2,000 point army. So I want to show you exactly how I achieved this painting scheme here. It was actually relatively quick and easy to do with this shape here. This crescent shape is just very easy to paint with cross hatches. So it was a very fun and very quick project, relatively quick. I had a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I hope you will stay tuned and take a look at this tutorial. Like most of my models, this has been primed with the Wraithbone spray, and I have chosen to still have it in sub-assemblies just to make it a bit easier to paint, especially the Necron pilot. Then I start using one of my favorite contrast paints, the Volupus Pink. I've chosen to go with the exact same colors that I have used previously on my Necron warriors, just to make sure that this is what sort of ties the whole army together. But I haven't really figured out exactly where I want each color to go, so I'm just painting along and making it up as I paint. Next up, I grab another contrast paint. This time it's the Aethermatic Blue. And people have asked me why it looks the way it does when it's just the contrast paints. So it looks very uneven, almost like I put it on with a sponge or something. But it's just a very thick layer of contrast paint applied with a brush. So it's very easy and simple to do. I've decided to go with another blue color for the part that goes over the cockpit. This is the Untitled Blue, also a contrast paint, as you can probably tell. And this I have not used on my Necron warriors, but I wanted it to stand out a little bit from the rest of the aircraft, while at the same time not looking out of place with the overall color scheme. I figured that I'm going to be using so many bright neon colors here that trying to keep it at least somewhat coherent with the basic colors was probably in order. I then decide I want to use the same blue color on these circles on the tip of the plane, just again to make sure that it's all tied neatly together. Lastly, I use the Achillean green contrast paint on the rest of the surfaces here on the plane. And this is again one of those colors that I also used on the Necron warriors. I had a hard time figuring out exactly how I wanted the warriors to look, and I have been a little bit questioning my color scheme. I have not really known whether or not I actually really loved it or just, sort of went with it. But now that I'm painting it on a much larger surface like the Doom Scythe, I must say that I am getting more and more happy with the color scheme all the time. So I'm really liking where this is going already. It looks, as you can see, very splotchy and uneven, but we are going to do something about this really soon. So I grab my trusty Pterodon turquoise and start doing the dark edge highlights and then the dark cross hatching here. As you can see, I do more of the darker cross hatches toward the edges of the panel, just to make sure that it looks a little bit sort of semi-realistic, that you would have more light falling on the raised line going across it than you would at the edges of the panels. I don't know if it really makes a lot of sense, but that's just the way I've chosen to do it. And I make sure to really highlight the symbols here on these panels, because this is one of the things that make it look really like it's a Necron plane. And I do the same thing here on the Untitled Blue, except that I'm using a black. This is the Black Templar contrast paint instead of the Pterodon turquoise. I don't think the Pterodon turquoise works really well on something that is such a very standard pure blue, so I've chosen to go with the black. Perhaps it would have been a tiny bit more ideal if I had mixed up some of the black and the blue to get sort of an in-between color, because the black is a little bit stark, but hey, that's what I went with. As I've said many times before, these pieces are first and foremost gaming pieces, something that I want to put on a tabletop and play with. So sometimes I sort of take the easier route to a finished result than I could have. Next up, I get out my lovely pink pigment, the Cyclam Red from PK Pro, and my Army Painter White, mix it up and start doing some edge highlights on the pink parts of the model. This is one of my favorite bits of painting like this, because this is where it all starts coming together and coming to life. And I mean, who wouldn't get, you know, just a big smile on their face painting with a very, very bright pink? I mean, come on, that's just fun any day. No matter what kind of model you're putting this on, this is just fun. And I really try to be careful here again with the Necron symbols. I want to highlight them very carefully and make sure that they really pop, because this is, after all, one of the things that defines this vessel, I think. So it's a tiny bit time consuming, but as I said in the beginning of the video, this is not actually the most difficult thing to paint in this style, just because there are so many relatively big flat surfaces. It's much more difficult when you have smaller rounded panels and lots of tiny little barrels and stuff you have to paint like this. Big panels like this is way easier. Lastly, I highlight it with a bit of white. This is just the Army Painter Matte White that I usually use. And I do exactly the same with the white paint here, edge highlighting the lighter turquoise parts of the model. And I try to be relatively careful with it. I don't want to have to redo this step. And then I just do the cross hatching closer to the top of the panel. And here you can see what it looks like so far. Then I take a green color, this is Citadel's Mood Green, and I do an edge highlight of the darker turquoise panels. And this is just an in-between step, because it'll be highlighted later on with a neon color, which you can see here. These are the neon pigments from Green Stuff World that I usually use for my very bright neon colors. So I just take a bit of pigment and a bit of Lahmian medium and mash it all up with an old brush. I found that if I leave it in a closed container for a couple of days, it'll sort of separate and the pigments will dry up. So I have to mix this every time I want to use it. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if there is a really clever solution to this, but if there is, I haven't found it. So if you know a clever solution to this, so I could have a ready-made batch of this just whenever I want it, that would be excellent. So please tell me in the comments below. I use the pigment Lahmian medium mix just as I use any other paint. It is not quite as smooth as ordinary paints, but it works just fine. Then I take another of the neon fluor Green Stuff World pigments, this time the blue one, mix it with a bit of Lahmian medium and also a tiny bit of the Army Painter Matte White. Start doing the edge highlighting here on the blue panel. Once I was happy with that, I grabbed my Posca, it's a sort of Sharpie, and I use that for the white edge highlights all around the panels. I wouldn't say I'm cheating here, but this is definitely a very easy way to achieve a very nice sharp edge highlight. Usually I don't do this, I usually just use my brush, because most models have so many nooks and crannies and crevices and stuff that it's almost impossible to get there, and then it's going to look a little bit silly that some of the edge highlights are very sharp and very clear and some of them are not quite as sharp. So in those cases I just prefer the brush, but here it's possible and I think it looks great. For the base I take some Vallejo earth texture and just put it on the base in a nice relatively thick layer. This is a very easy and efficient way of doing a base, and I sometimes almost regret going this route with the Necrons because it's just so simple and toned down almost. But on the other hand, my color schemes on these models is just so crazy that I don't want the bases to grab your attention. I think the models on their own are easily able to do that. And once it's dry, just give it a quick dry brushing of a gray color. You can go with whichever gray you want. Then I put on some watered down PVA glue and then just some small pebbles of, this is just some cork, bits and pieces of cork. that I put on just to give it a little bit of variation, and then some sand, just again to give some added texture and something that just breaks up the gray a little bit. Then lastly, I put on my tufts, and I have these from Gamer's Grass, and they have these really nice, very, very bright tufts. I know they have adhesives on them, but I use a little bit of super glue anyway, just to make sure that they actually stay put on the base once I have put them there. I don't want them falling off halfway through a game, and I'm not very kind to my models when I'm transporting them, so they need to be a little bit sturdy. And here you can see the end result. I think this was so much fun, and I really, really like the finished results. I think it came together great. All in all, it's just a completely overwhelming paint scheme, and I know that I'm going to get some comments from people saying, oh, this hurts my eyes, and I think that is that's actually very fair. This is definitely not something that's to everyone's liking, and I completely acknowledge that, but I still think that it's a fun technique, and it's certainly something that you don't see on a gaming table every other day. And here you can see what the model looks like under a UV light, which was a family favorite. My family is not very much into Warhammer, but both my wife and daughter thought that this was terribly good fun to see the model like this. I think they would now prefer me to paint every single model I own with colors that can glow in the dark. To be fair though, I really like it as well. So this was what I wanted to show you in this video. I hope you like it, and if you did, please consider giving my video a like and subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell so that you get told whenever I post a new video. If you have something you want to show me, you are more than welcome to join me on the Dice and Demons showroom on Facebook. I will leave a link to that in the show notes below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it fun and entertaining, or perhaps even motivating, and let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!